Let's see if we are really live. So, live to all of our social media. And today we're going to be talking about the anxiety depression connection and how a lot of people think that they're two totally different things, and they're not. And we want to talk about how connected they really are and why you typically see one when you see the other. You just don't realize it. And we're going to be talking about how that actually also connects to some very stereotypical symptoms that we see and very connected to autoimmune as well. And then we're going to be just kind of circling back. So if you have questions, you can always throw them into the chat, and we'll be watching. Some of the social media is a little delayed on some of the chat that comes through to us, so we'll be trying to pay attention. So, all right, so let's chat about anxiety and depression. So the one thing a lot of people don't realize that is going on in the system is that anxiety and depression are actually the same thing. The body just treats it differently. So anxiety is more when it up levels, or not up levels, but up regulates everything and makes you feel like you need to run and hide. It's one of the fight or flight responses. But depression is also actually a fight or flight response, but it's more of that freeze, kind of shut down response. So it's still more of a fight or flight typical issue that's going on where the body doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel balanced, it doesn't feel in control. So it's just the opposite. It's the same coin, essentially. It depends on what side of the coin that you're on. So Anthony, when you have people who come in, because you're doing more of the science kind of component, Anthony's looking more at the labs and he's looking more at the tangible components to what's going on for people. What things are you seeing on labs, or what things are you seeing when people are complaining about symptoms that also tie into anxiety and or depression related issues?
In addition to markers that we run on labs, a lot of it could also just be lifestyle things, like lack of sunlight could also lead to not getting out in nature. That can play a role. And like you were saying, it really, our feelings and thoughts in our bodies release hormones into the blood, and that's really what triggers the physical response, the biochemical response. But as far as specific markers that will give indication, besides if someone just says that I'm depressed or anxious, is definitely adrenal markers. We'll see a pattern that'll show some adrenal dysfunction, whether it being the adrenal glands are underproducing or overproducing things like cortisol, which definitely can lead to feeling anxious. Things just like basic nutrients. Vitamin D is the big one. I mentioned sun earlier. Vitamin D, B vitamins, magnesium, even things like omega-3 fatty acids. Our body can, with the exception of omega-3s, because they're essential, meaning we cannot get them from, we need to get them from our diet. Our body can't make them. Our body can make fat, but it can't make essential fatty acids. We need to get those from our diet. So that also could play a role. And then even protein, if you look at the pathway on how serotonin is produced, which is our feel-good hormone, the starting point of that, or the nutrient or amino acid, is tryptophan. And that's going to be in some kind of protein, whether it's plant or animal protein, but we need to get sufficient amounts of that as well. And what I'm not saying, so don't misunderstand, I'm not saying go out and eat a bunch of protein or start taking tryptophan supplements or start supplementing with vitamin D and B and the things I mentioned before. You really need to see what's going on currently, because I'm meeting with someone this afternoon and her vitamin D is almost at a toxic level. So you want to actually see where these markers are to make sure that, more is not better, right? You just want to make sure that your physiology is in the optimal range.
Right. And so, one of the things that you'll hear people say is, oh, I need to start taking more of this because my whatever nutrient is too low, where they're also not necessarily taking it into account that they may not be absorbing appropriate amounts of the nutrient. They may be taking enough through food or otherwise, but they're not absorbing. So one of the things that you'll typically see with people when they're struggling with nutrient absorption, when they're struggling with low nutrition or nutrients in the body, and they're not producing that the way that they should or converting what they need to convert, is that the body is too stressed out and taking its resources for something else. So if you are living in a stressed out environment right now, even if you're used to it being that way, in fact, that might be making it worse for you, because you're in a situation where you're so used to it, you don't realize how bad it's become. Your body has to take those resources and put it to something else. So when you're feeling things like anxiety, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling depression, you're feeling burned out, that's one way for the body to try to communicate with you that it's not feeling safe. It's feeling overworked. It's feeling too much. So it's got to use its resources, not on just making you feel good and balanced. It's got to use its resources for something else to get you out of danger. So anxiety and depression, there's simply more symptoms to give you an idea that something isn't balanced. What ends up happening, unfortunately, in our more conventionally trained society is we look at those things as separate from the body. Anxiety and depression are typically looked at as mental issues, as emotional problems that we need to separate. The body goes one way to get fixed, and then the mental emotional goes another way to get fixed. And so we look at different practitioners for the mental and emotional than we look for the body. What the body is trying to tell you is that it's one, and then it needs to be treated as one whole unit. When we start separating those things out, we're not treating the body as a whole, and we could be messing up some pieces of the body by trying to fix others. And let me be really clear. When I say fix, I'm usually using quotes because there's nothing broken in the body if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling stress. It's just the body saying that the resources it needs to help find that balance are being utilized elsewhere. So like Anthony was saying, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling like life is too hard, if you're feeling some of these things, that will have an impact on your hormones, that will have an impact on how your body converts, that will have impact on how your body takes in nutrients or does the production that it needs to do. So we really want you to start looking at your body as a whole unit and stop trying to separate out the mental and emotional from the physical. They're all one. Mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, they're all one thing. So if you go to one practitioner and they're saying, well, you have to take a medication to force your body to do what we wanted to do for the emotional stuff, you will have an impact on what's going on with your hormonal balance or with your nutrient absorption, right? If you go to a doctor and they're not taking into account that there's an emotional component to everything, and they're just giving you something to try to force the physical response that you're trying to get, it will have an impact on your emotional response. Right? So for those of you feeling anxiety, for those of you feeling depressed, overwhelmed, any of the things that associate with that for you, I want you to take a step back and see if you can, and I know for some of you you're not going to like this, but I want you to take a step back and thank your body for that symptom because it's gotten your attention. And once your body has your attention, then you can actually start doing something about it. But if you're just trying to force that attention getter to go away, you're trying to shove it down, you're trying to ignore it, walk it off, medicate it, and you're not addressing the core reason for that symptom in the first place, then your body's going to fight back harder. And it's not just going to be anxiety tomorrow, it's going to be something else. Right? So it's not just the heart palpitations. It's not just feeling like you're out of control. It's not just feeling like everything is racing ahead of you and you can't get a handle on it. You're going to actually have a physical response to it. I mean, heart palpitations are a physical response too. So if you can get into a space of curiosity and gratitude on your anxiousness or your depression or the feelings thereof, you can actually start getting to a question of why how is this there for me to get my attention to do something different? When you start looking at your body as a whole, you can use the scientific pieces, the tangible pieces that Anthony takes people through You can look at the labs, you can look at them as a piece of the puzzle and not just the answer. And then you can also work with a practitioner, the way that I work with clients, and start looking at how are these physical symptoms being manifested through anxiety and depression, or how's the anxiety and depression showing me where there is more of a physical response that I need to take and pay attention to. They're all connected. You cannot separate them. The other thing that Anthony and I hope that you get out of this, and we talk a lot about this, so we have the Transformational Healing book. Anthony, I don't know if you have one right next to you. Right there. We have our Transformational Healing book. And in here, we talk a lot about all of the things that we talk about on these live events too. You can go to nourish123.com/th if you want to go to the landing page. It'll take you to Amazon if you want to grab a copy of the book for yourself. But one of the things that we talk about in the book is when anxiety or depression or any other symptom shows up in your life, how do you see it? Do you let it own you? So do you start to, and we hear this all the time from people. Well, my anxiety makes me feel this way. Well, my depression is causing me to do this. My depression is causing weight gain. My anxiety is causing me to have foggy brain. And it's not yours. We don't want you to own the symptom because then it owns you and it becomes part of your identity. It's just a symptom. It doesn't own you. Right? My depression, my anxiety, my thyroid disorder, my digestive issues. It's just an experience in that moment. It's not something that is who you are unless you've decided to take it on as part of your identity. And when we see clients doing that, or we see people who are coming to us for help doing that, that's one of the first things that we start discussing is why are you owning or allowing this symptom to own your life experience? So start listening to the conversation that you are literally having that's coming out of your mouth about what you're experiencing, and then start looking at the symptoms as part of the conversation the body is trying to have with you to say something isn't right, and the resources that I need to stay healthy and happy and balanced are being utilized in a space where my body thinks it's in trouble and it's in fight or flight mode. It's in survive mode. It feels like it's in danger. And then anything else on that, on the kind of tangible side that you want to talk about? You and I talked about this before. The medications really actually kind of causing some of these symptoms that are anxious and depressed symptoms. Some medications that we see clients on for thyroid disorders, digestive issues, autoimmune conditions, sleep. Oh gosh, we see that a lot too. Sleep aids triggering anxiety and depression symptoms.
Yeah, well, chemical stress with the medications.
Yeah, because the body, every single medication will cause some sort of side effect. Every single side effect is unattended, is not what you were going for in the first place. What was that?
Direct effects too.
Yep. And you'll start to see some of the medication that you may be taking for something else now triggering feelings of anxiety or depression. Or the medication that you're taking to subside or go past or move around the anxiety and depressive symptoms are starting to then cause other issues like digestive issues, diarrhea, bloating, weight gain, hormone imbalance, libido issues. We see that as well. So it's in the cascade of things. So the better question is, why this? Why now? What's happening? I wonder why, or what I can do to help with this. So please, we want you to start looking at anxiety and depression to be symptoms and not who you are. It also could be part of your back history coming through the genetic line. So it's part of the family genetics to lean on more depression or lean on more anxiety. So that's part of the storyline, right? It's coming through the DNA, but it doesn't mean that you have to express that particular DNA. You can learn how to downregulate it or suppress it. So what we'd love for you guys to do, we're actually doing an entire event on this conversation, but at a deeper level on the root causes. So we're doing an event on the 24th called 3 Keys to Dissolve Anxiety, Overwhelm, and Burnout, because we are seeing an increased number of people coming to us specifically for anxiety, overwhelm, and feelings of burnout. And what we think is really happening is that there's still some aftermath coming from what really has occurred in this country for the last 3-4 years since COVID really hit. There's still some aftermath coming on the emotional side, as well as the physical side, coming out of COVID, that are now hitting people at a level because everybody wanted to go back to the way it was, and there's no going back to the way it was. Some things feel like they normalized out, but a lot of things didn't. And so a lot of people are struggling with this idea of this is the way life is now. And we are seeing an incredible uptick in anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. So if you'd like to join us at this masterclass, we are getting knee deep into the details about this. In the first 7 minutes, I'm going to tell you the core way to actually legitimately dissolve anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. In the first 7 minutes, I'm going to go right for it so that you know what you're getting in the beginning, and it's not just a bunch of fluff in this whole thing. Anthony are good at just going for the throat on the answers on a lot of things. So the first 7 minutes, I'm going to hit the actual way to what you really need in order to dissolve anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout, which are all attached to other symptoms that we typically see all the time, things like hormone imbalance, digestive issues, thyroid issues, autoimmune. So go to nourish123.com or nourish123challenge.com. I always forgot the challenge on that. If you want to see more about that event, it's going to be a small group. We're going to be going all in on it, and we're going to be taking questions and making it really interactive and experiential so you can really get what you need out of it. So nourish123challenge.com. Bringing the body back together, getting to the root issues, really handling what's going on with anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. Anthony, anything else on that we need to cover?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we got in it today. We were right for it. So,
Yeah.
All right. You guys have a good rest of your Monday. We're good to see all of you. And we will see you next Monday.